Matthew, I have to ask you. Well, no, first of all, let me tell you, I know a lot of incredible, beautiful, educated, single women, and they are swimming in the dating pool. They have told me that there's a little bit of urine in the dating pool. They said it's not safe out here, Matthew. And I'm trying to figure out, what am I to tell my girls who are out here struggling?
What are they struggling with?
They say that their selection is not great, that oftentimes they find men who say they want to be in relationships, but they also want to build their careers, and they don't feel like they can do both at the same time. So they put them kind of on the back burner while they're building their careers and their lives, and they don't mind partnering to build a life together and to help them achieve their dreams, just like they don't mind having support in their dreams as well. But it just seems like there's a disconnect in desire.
Yeah, well, I think, firstly, I want to acknowledge everyone who's feeling that, because it is hard out there. Like, it's finding love is not easy. It is for, you're going out there and you're experiencing people who have misaligned intentions. They don't want what you want so much of the time. It's hard to feel our friends are pairing off and we're the one being left behind. It's hard to feel like there's this thing that we want more than anything else in the world, that we want love, and that we somehow have to hide how badly we want it because feels shameful to want it that badly, or it feels like we're desperate, or it's embarrassing. It is hard out there. And unlike other areas of our life where we can control a lot, if we want to get in better shape, we can change our diet and we can work out every day, and our shape will change. We may not get the ideal shape we've always wanted, but for sure, our body will change. In our love life, we can go on a date every day for the next 6 months and still not find love at the end of it. That is a really difficult thing for us, to feel that out of control over something that we feel is so fundamental to our happiness. So I want to acknowledge how hard it is out there for people, and that you're not alone if you're feeling that. You are in really, really great company. So if we start from a basis of going, finding love is very often hard, that there's nothing wrong with us if we're finding it hard. It just is hard. Then we can start to say, well, okay, how might we do love better if we were being really smart about it? And I think, to your point that you made, the kinds of guys that are not prioritizing you, they're putting their career first, they're saying they're not ready for a commitment. What we have to start getting really good at is deciding what is important to us. Because if we say what's important to me is someone who's super attractive and charismatic and has a great job and is tall and is like whatever it may be. When we start listing these things, if someone comes along who doesn't value us, but they tick all of those boxes, we'll keep going because we've told ourselves that they're what we're looking for. Wow. If instead we say, what I really want is someone who sees me as their equal, someone who is kind, someone who is loyal, and someone who is ready for the same things that I am ready for, then it doesn't matter how hot, sexy, charismatic, or accomplished anyone is. If they don't pass that test of being those fundamental things, we're not interested in giving them another day of our life. And what I see consistently is people giving too much of their time and energy to people who have already proven themselves to be bad bets. That's the part that has to stop, because if we stop doing that, it's astonishing, Sarah, how much time we will get back. All of a sudden, we'll find ourselves with an abundance of time to go out there and meet people. And I want to tell people, your love life is an area where you go slow to go fast. If you go fast and you're like, oh, but this person, they're super eligible, they have all these characteristics that I really like. If that makes you go fast and try and get that person and invest time and energy, you're liable to waste 2 years of your life in an unhappy situationship where eventually you go to someone saying, how do I get this person to commit? They still won't commit. Meanwhile, 2 years of your life has gone by. And I'm not someone who says the right person is around every corner. They're not. But let's say someone who could be right for you only comes along once a year. Well, in that moment, when that person passes you by, you need space for that person. Love needs space.
Wow.
When they show up, even if it comes along once a year, when they show up, if your head is in your phone looking for a text from someone who won't text you back, or if you're instead if they're in the coffee shop sitting next to you and you're in conversation with your friends about trying to get some guy to commit who won't commit ever, you're missing that moment. Love needs space. And you'll find the right person faster if you learn to say no to the wrong person quicker.
Okay, so I already know that has solved so many of my girls' problems, because when you talk about being very intentional about what you're looking for in a partner, not just how you want them to show up in the world, but who you want them to be in their core, I think it does give us a more crystallized vision of who we are looking for to be a potential partner. You've got a big book that I have to say makes a big promise. It says Love Life. It's called Love Life, How to Raise Your Standards, Find Your Person, and Live Happily No Matter What. Can you talk a little bit about how this even can happen when love is taking up so much space, or at least the desire for love has taken up so much space as it relates to our confidence, our worth, and our value? How do we get to that no matter what part?
I'm so happy you asked that, because this for me is the most important promise of the book. I want this book to be a co-pilot for anybody looking for love, and I want it to help them find love faster and do love better. But my not so secret hidden motive for this book is to help people figure out how to be happy enough no matter what happens. And I say happy enough as an important choice of words. To me, happy is intimidating. And many of us can't identify with being blissfully happy when there are some crucial things in our life missing. But happy enough for many is a more achievable step to reach. And I had a woman come to me. Every year I have a very tiny group of people that I work with intensively over a year, no more than around 50 people. And one of the women in this group came to me and asked me a question. And remember, in this moment, she could ask me anything. She could ask me, Matt, how do I find love in the next 12 months? What could I do? She didn't ask that. She said, how do I kill the desire to find love? Wow. She said, I have wanted to find love so badly my whole life, and it has never happened for me. And if I can't kill this desire and it never happens, I'm going to be sad for the rest of my life. So can you help me get rid of the desire to find love? Not can you help me find love? Can you help me get rid of the desire to find love? And I wrote this book not just for the optimist out there who's excited to find love. I wrote this book for her because I understand what it is when you're in such deep pain that you don't know that you'll ever be okay again. And, you know, one of the things I write about in the book, which I've never spoken about publicly before, is a huge period of my life that I'm only just emerging from in the last couple of years, where I had really significant chronic physical pain. And it showed up as pain in my head and my ear. It also showed up as loud ringing in my ears, tinnitus, and it ruined my life for a long time. more than I'd like to admit. And I didn't talk about it publicly because it was just too painful to even talk about. I couldn't talk about it without crying. I couldn't talk about it without, feeling like I would break if I spoke about it. Mm-hmm. So I lived with this in silence while I was making videos and speaking on stage and, doing everything that I do. And the only people that knew about it were my close friends and family. But it got so bad that, I remember going to a therapist and saying, I've made a decision that I'm just going to live for other people now. I'm going to live for my mom and my parents, my brothers, my extended family and all of my friends and my company. And I'm just going to live for everyone else because I'm never going to be happy again for as long as I have this pain. And I don't know how to make this pain go away. So I was saying to this therapist a version of what this woman was saying to me. And it was a problem because I didn't know how to make it go away. And so the tools that I put in this book are the tools that I use to find my happy enough, even with that pain. And that was everything to me, because if I didn't do that, my life truly would have been ruined. And I think what's exciting about happy enough is that when you get to happy enough, you start to get your power back. From there, you can make a difference again. From there, you can create magic again. From there, you can start to create opportunities again. But you can't do that when you feel like your life is over, or where you feel like your life is unsustainable the way it is today. So I want people to read this book and get to a point where they go, even though I may want to find love, and that's an admirable goal to have, and this book's going to help them get there, I'm actually okay. I'm okay. And even if nothing changed in my life, I'll be okay. And when you get to that place, it is a superpower, because that is what gives you the ability to say no to someone who is not on your path. And when you meet someone who is on your path, it gives you the ability to not suddenly become a different version of yourself trying to please them, but instead show up as an authentic version of yourself that's going to continue to attract them and deepen a relationship with them. So happy enough is your superpower, and happy enough is something you can get to today before you've ever met that person. And that's what I show people how to do.
I love that you're not just a coach for relational intelligence. You're called a relationship expert. Your YouTube channel just racks up millions upon billions of views, helping so many people navigate the dynamics of being in relationship with others. But you also talk about confidence a lot. And I believe that part of what many women experience when they are no longer confident in who they are, whether it's their appearance or their intellect or their age, is they begin to see themselves through the lens of a deficit. And when you see yourself through a lens of a deficit, it creates desperation. Can you talk a little bit about how the restoration of confidence allows for us to then position ourselves to not just look for love, but to be love in a way that allows us to show up in the world as someone who is healthy enough to be in partnership with ourselves and our friends and siblings and parents and whoever else, not just a partner.
I love that. I love the way you put it, that we come to our confidence from a place of deficit, because that's exactly right. We do the same with the way we are with regret. When we've made mistakes or we have regrets, it's like we start our morning from a place of, I've got to compensate for a life that I've ruined or mistakes I've made, or instead of starting from a place of building something. It's worth defining what we mean by confidence, because this is something I do in the book. I outline 3 levels of confidence. The first one being the surface. That's how we come across to other people, how we walk, talk, and act. The second one is the identity level of confidence. And that is, what are the things that are the sources of our confidence? So it could be our job. It could be the skills we've built in our life. It could be our friendship circle. It could be the money we've made. It could, like, we all have confidence that comes from different places in our lives. And then the deepest level of confidence is much deeper than any of those things. It's the core. And the core is the relationship that you have with yourself. And as you said, the relationship we have with ourselves often is one that's built on this foundation of deficit, that I'm not good enough, I don't match up, or I'm only good enough when I'm being these things, which leads us to be people pleasers and people who are constantly trying to earn love from other people, or constantly feeling like they need to look a certain way to be worthy of love. So that relationship with ourselves is one that is a very unhealthy one for most people. So how do we get out of this deficit mode that you're talking about? We have to start to love ourselves for very different reasons than the ones we think we need to love ourselves on. So if you ask most people, why do you love yourself? Or why should you love yourself? At first, they'll be stumped. They struggle to come up with reasons. Then they often start listing qualities in themselves. They're like, well, because I'm generous and I'm kind and I do a lot for my family and I am ambitious and I work hard. And I see all of those things as a giant problem, because those things are the root of the deficit problem that you're speaking of. Because if you think that what makes me lovable is all of these great qualities, then you'll instantly start looking for the qualities you're not as a reason to not love yourself.
Wow.
Or on the days where you're not your great qualities, if you love yourself because you're kind and then you have a selfish day, you'll find it hard to love yourself on that day. So many of us are trying to love ourselves based on a feeling we'll get for ourselves if we can convince ourselves we are special. And I always found that to be a problem because there's always someone who's more special in those ways that could walk into the room. And that just invites comparison and me not feeling good enough. But B, I'm 1 in 8 billion people. How special can I really feel? There's loads of amazing people in the world. If I try to convince myself I'm special, I'm very quickly going to focus on other people who are better looking, who are funnier, who are more successful, more talented, more of all of those things. So I believe that if we're to get out of deficit, we have to completely change the rules of how we come to love ourselves. I think we can dispense with the idea of trying to convince ourselves we are special altogether, and instead focus on one thing only. And that is that we are the human being that we are responsible for. Imagine for a moment that from the day you were born, you were given a human. And someone whispered in your ear, hey, just so you know, you're going to volunteer for a lot of jobs in your life. But the one job you always will have, your number one job, is to take care of this human. It is to show up for this human, to nurture this human, to encourage this human, to stand up for them, to help them realize their potential, and to try and give them the best life they can possibly have. That's your job. Now, for a few years, someone else had the responsibility of doing that, right? We had a parent figure or a parent who took care of us and nurtured us into adulthood. They may or may not have done a good job, but their job was to keep us alive for a while. And then it was us who took full custody back of this human. And from that point on, it was our job. Now, when you look at it through that lens, comparison becomes totally irrelevant. It's like saying to a parent, why do you love your child? When they answer that question, most parents aren't comparing their children to other children. When you ask a parent, why do you love your child? They'll look at you like you're a crazy person. They'll be like, what are you talking about? Because they're my child. Because they're mine. Well, what if you imagine someone saying to you, why do you love yourself? And you just looking at them like it's a crazy question. Like, what are you talking about? I'm mine. I'm my human. When you look at it through that lens, you no longer feel in deficit because you're no longer comparing yourself with anybody. Comparison is irrelevant. You can't exchange your human for another human.
Yeah.
You only get one human. So your job is not to measure that human and judge them and see what they don't have. Your job is very simple. Do the best you can with this human as they are. How could you love this human into being the best possible version of who they are? Now there's no deficit. There's just making the best of the human that you have. And when you start thinking like that, and someone comes along who treats this human badly, you don't think, oh, but I really want to get this person. You think, no, this person's bad for my human. This person doesn't treat my human well. This person makes my human unhappy. Let me get this person away from my human. That's how you start to think. Loving yourself is not a feeling. It is an action. It is an approach. It is a job. You don't need to feel love for yourself. You need to love yourself like it's your job, because it is. It's not that the cavalry isn't coming. It's that the cavalry is you.
I wish that I would have heard this about 22 years ago. I got pregnant as a teenager, and I think everything just like clicked for me. 10 years down the road, I was 23, 24 years old when I finally got to this space where I was like, I belong to me. Like, I'm not just this teen girl who's trying to find someone who's going to make her feel better. I belong to me, and I'm going to take care of me, which I think was really important because I did not know that within just a couple of years, I would meet the man that I'm married to now, my incredible husband. And I want to talk a little bit about not just seeking love, but once you're finally in love, and recognize that being in love with a person is not necessarily the fairy tale that we have been sold since we were younger children or that we see in rom-coms, but love as an action when it relates to loving someone else requires humility and growth and patience. Can we talk a little bit about the journey of learning to love someone, especially after you've come to a space where you've like had to protect yourself? Now you're having to trust someone else with who you are.
Oh, that's the hard part, right? You can, at a certain point, you have to grow by experiencing life at the frontier between you and another person. Not all growth can just be experienced in a room on our own. It has to be tested. That's what makes us robust. Robustness is not us sitting in a room on our own. Robustness is going out to meet the world and all of the collisions and the tensions and the difficulties that come from trying to take up the same space as another person and navigate that together. And of course, the right relationship, the one that works, is the one where there's a compatibility to the way that the two of you take up space together. It's the one where you can show who you are and that person has an acceptance of that, and they can show who they are and you have an acceptance of that. And neither of you are perfect. You both have your challenges, and no one comes to a relationship fully healed. I don't care who they are. Everyone comes with their stuff. But how well do you navigate your imperfections together? How well do you navigate your challenges together? You know, there are certain people in this world whose problems we don't relate to or we have zero patience for. And if that's the case, we're not the right person for them. But the right person is someone who can show up vulnerably as themselves. And we're like, I'm in for this. I believe the right person is the person who we show up to and they're good at handling us. We spend so much time, I think, in relationships asking who's right, who's wrong, instead of going, who's good at handling me? And who am I good at handling? That, to me, is one of the ultimate tests of compatibility. And that's not me I'm not giving a pass to the worst kinds of behavior, because it's incumbent on all of us to show up to the relationship as the best version of our authentic selves, right? If I'm like, it's authentic for me to freeze you out for a week after an argument, that's unfair to expect someone to be okay with that. There's a quote that is often attributed to Marilyn Monroe that says, if you don't accept me at my worst, you don't deserve me at my best. I'm not sure I agree with that quote. Like if your worst is abusive, it's not incumbent on me to accept that so that I get your best. That's a mandate for an abusive relationship. But if we show up authentically as ourselves with, our pain and our insecurities and the things that we're trying to work on, and we're also taking ownership of them, but we're also kind of laying it bare, I think the right relationship is the one where someone sees all of that and they see the journey we're on and they're like, I'm in for that. I'll sign up for that. That to me is the right person for us.
Matthew, I know that there are going to be so many people who are just blown away by the aha moments. What I love so much about your content and the way that you present it is that it feels reachable. And the thing about love and growth and confidence and healing, it all feels very out of reach. But here you are giving us tools that feel very much so in hand. At what point in your life did you realize that you had a gift that could help other people do the things that felt impossible?
I think I knew at 19 I had something, but let me bring that down to earth. I knew at 19 I had something, right? I knew that there was a way that I communicated that seemed to reach people on some level. I also made the fatal mistake of thinking that I needed to look like I knew more than I did. And I look back now and I cringe at how much I felt like I had to know at an age where I didn't really know it. And I wish I had, someone asked me recently, what would you go back and tell yourself, your younger self, if you could go back? And I was like, you know what I'd tell him? I'd say your energy and your heart and the way you just are with people is healing all on its own. You don't need to have all the answers on top of that. If you just keep showing up with that energy and that intention, that will be enough. And you can catch up on all of the life experience as you go. But you don't need to know it all. You don't need to be able to relate to every situation already. Just be curious and keep bringing this beautiful energy and you'll be fine. Instead, what I did was I tried to know too much and talk like I knew more than I did. And I think for many years that became a prison for me where I felt like I couldn't be exactly who I was and I couldn't be vulnerable with my own challenges. And the problem when you can't be vulnerable about your own challenges is it gets harder to heal them because you're trying to grow in private away from everybody instead of with the support of everybody and in a way that just feels congruent with who you are and where you really are. So it's always why it breaks my heart. When you see like on Instagram, like a 12-year-old motivational speaker and they're going on a rant about something and they're cute and and everything they're saying makes sense. But my heart breaks for that kid because I'm like, somewhere in your mind, you got it you got it into your head that you need to know it all already. And that's a massive trap. And I think at any age, if we can get out of that and get back into curiosity, that's where the fun is.
Oh, goodness. Okay, so I know before we close out that there are so many people who are listening and they have something that they feel like is a gift, but they have all of these other things that they say, you know what, I don't know this, I don't know that, so maybe this gift doesn't have as much value. What I hear you saying is that gift in itself, in its raw form, without any of the jazz or whatever else you see from other people, is enough for you to share with the world and to make the world a better place. What would you say to them to make them finally just maybe jumpstart their journey of owning their gift and releasing it into the world?
Well, there's a writer called William Zinsser who wrote a very famous book on writing. It's called On Writing Well, and it was a book aimed at non-fiction writers. And I always remember him writing in this book about how if you have a writer that considers, let's say, writing about the city of Tokyo, they may not do it because they're thinking, well, Tokyo's been written about 1,000 times. You know, what do I have to add to the travel culture conversation around Tokyo? And he said, we need to hear your version of Tokyo. It's your voice that's needed. It's not that we need just another essay on Tokyo. We need your lens on Tokyo because you're the only one who can give that. And I would encourage anyone out there listening to think about that in your journey, that it's not about whether you're better or worse than anybody else. It's that only you can provide your specific lens. Only you can write about life in whatever form you're doing it and whatever way you're trying to create things and make things and do things. Only you can write about life the way that you've lived it and with your story. And that's the story that the world needs to hear. They don't need to hear a poor version of someone else's story. They need to hear an authentic version of yours. And if your intention is truth, then you don't need to worry about being right or wrong. Like, I know every week when I release a video, I'm always going to miss something. I'm always going to, forget a certain caveat, or there's going to be some side of life I haven't seen, and someone is going to point out that my video is really great for these people, but very glib when it comes to this type of situation. That's natural. If my intention is to help people and it's to just find truth and to express it as best I can, then I don't even worry about the criticism, really, because I don't even think of it as criticism. I think, oh, you've helped me get a little closer to truth next week. Yeah. Something you've said is going to shape and sculpt my answer and the way I'm saying it into something that's even better next week. Thank you for getting me closer to truth. And thank you for helping me help more people by sharing with me that there was something I missed. If my intention is being right, or if my intention is looking smart, or if my intention is impressing everyone, then I'm in trouble. But if my intention is helping and getting closer to truth, then I'm safe no matter what happens, because every week I can get a little closer to that. And I think everyone can take that on board for themselves. So I would say, know that your voice is what's needed, because you're the only one who can express the exact story and the learnings that you've had in your life that are particular to you. And base your intentions in things that are bulletproof, not in things that can be shattered at the first sign of resistance or criticism.
Matthew, thank you so much, not just for your generosity in time and the thoughtfulness in your responses, but for your service to the world and to humanity. No doubt in my mind that so many people are better and more in love with themselves and with the world around them because of your yes. So thank you very much for doing this podcast with me.
Thank you so much for having me, Sarah. I really appreciate it. And your questions are really, like, you nail it with your questions. You're very insightful, and you're an amazing listener. And it's like it's fun watching you listen and then like just come up with like the perfect next question based on what's just been said. You're a very present interviewer and host, which is not all that common. So I really appreciate it, and I really respect and admire the way you're coming at your work. And for anyone out there who wants a copy of the book, it's called Love Life. It's how to raise your standards, find your person, and live happily no matter what.
Oh, beautiful. Okay, I want to make sure we check it out. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.